It's time for the whole 9 yards. Hello, everyone. I'm Ralph Ventre. We have an important week awaiting 3 conference games. 2 of those contests will comprise our featured day-night doubleheader on ESPN3. Sacred Heart closing out the non-conference schedule this week. All 7 teams in action. We have a lot to talk about. Let's get right to work and kick off our opening drive. We start in Smithfield with a game that will be carried live here on NEC Front Row. Both of these teams played in the Steel City last week. Now they come back home east for more Northeast Conference action. Central Connecticut and Bryant looking to remain unbeaten in Northeast Conference play. When it comes to offense, these are 2 top-tier attacks in the NEC, both averaging more than 400 yards per game, both led by quarterbacks who rank in the national top 20 in completion percentage. Bryant's Price Wilson, Central Connecticut's Jacob Dolgala, both completing right around 66% of their passes. Bryant and CCSU, they rank first and second amongst NEC team leaders in first downs. As far as one battle to focus on within this game, that would be Bryant's vaunted pass rush against CCSU's top quality offensive line. CCSU has done a good job of protecting Dolgala this year, only 5 sacks thus far this season. On the other side, Bryant has been wreaking havoc with the pass rush, especially in its 2 Northeast Conference victories. The Bulldogs, 8 sacks in those 2 games. 3 of those were strip sacks. We'll talk more in detail about one of those pass rushers later in the show, but in terms of the unit's success, Bryant head coach James Perry credits effort level and competition amongst teammates.
It becomes a little bit of a competition. Who's going to get it? Who's going to, push the hardest? And I think that's happening in the pass rush too. We have, a guy who's got NFL talent just Koskien's got this great, and Tomas is, feeding off each other. And now, you're really looking at 2 guys who, in that fourth quarter, their effort level was so high, it was almost unblockable. So, it was really, it's kind of exactly what we're trying to do. We're all trying to feed off each other. We're all trying to compete, look for ways to make each other better.
We'll find out if Central can slow down that Bryant pass rush. We're in for a good one. 2 top-tier offenses, and as Coach Perry says, strength versus strength.
It'll be a great challenge. Terrific back, really well-coached offensive line, really good up front that way. So, it'd be two kind of strength versus strength situation that way.
Now let's head down to Staten Island for the first half of the NEC doubleheader on ESPN3. St. Francis visiting Grimes Hill for a 12 noon kickoff. Paul Dottino, Kevin Gilbride, Craig D'Amico will have this one live on ESPN3. Now, the last time St. Francis went to Grimes Hill, it was the 2016 regular season finale, and they watched the Wagner Seahawks spoil their chance at a perfect NEC season. Fast forward to 2018, this matchup is on the front end of the NEC schedule. Wagner 0-1, St. Francis U yet to play a conference contest. And as things stand right now, this one will feature the conference's top rush defense, St. Francis U, limiting opposing ball carriers to a measly 3 yards per carry. On the other side, you have the leading rusher in the football championship subdivision, Ryan Folsom, already over 900 rush yards thus far this season. So that's certainly a matchup to keep an eye on. And when it comes to Wagner, Folsom certainly isn't the team's only playmaker. In fact, St. Francis head coach Chris Valerio knows that Wagner's talent runs deep. He's prepared for a dogfight on Saturday.
And they got a tremendous running back, they got a tremendous quarterback, tremendous receivers. So they got a ton of talent. Defensively, they're very big up front. They have some linebackers that can really move. Their secondary's big. I mean, this is a talented team. I mean, don't let their record fool you. This is a very, very good Wagner team, and we're going to have to be on our A game to be able to go up there and come back with a victory. But we're just looking to keep improving, and we got to be ready for everything they throw at us because this is a battle year in and year out.
Another thing to keep an eye on in the SFU Wagner matchup, it's special teams. Will that have any effect on the outcome, particularly the return game? Wagner's Denzel Knight, 10th in the FCS in kickoff return average, 28.9 yards per return. We saw him take one to the house at Big Sky member Montana State. Then on the other side, St. Francis U's Nick Ranella is leading the nation in punt return average, over 21 yards per return. He has 2 punt returns for touchdowns this season. So let's see if special teams is a factor in this one. You'll find out by watching live, 12 noon on ESPN3. Now I move to the second half of the featured NEC Double Dip on ESPN3. And the nightcap will double as the annual Steel City Showdown. Robert Morris makes the short trip from Moon Township to Rooney Field. Both of these teams are searching for their first Northeast Conference win. They both suffered narrow losses at the hand of Bryant. As for their most recent outings, Robert Morris has had 2 huge offensive performances in its 2 Northeast Conference games, scoring 81 points in those 2 contests, its highest scoring 2-game stretch in more than a decade. Meanwhile, the Duquesne defense played well its last time out against Bryant. Despite the 1-point loss, the Dukes allowed only 2 offensive touchdowns, and they were the first team this season to hold Bryant's offense under 300 yards. Stick around for the latter part of our show, as we'll feature some important individuals in this Robert Morris and Duquesne matchup, a matchup that you can follow live via the ESPN app, 7 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff, Saturday evening on the Bluff. John Schmelk, Rasheed Marshall, Greg Meskel on the call. Closing up our opening drive, it's the lone non-conference contest on the Week 7 docket. Sacred Heart closes out its non-league schedule by facing an Ivy League member for the 3rd week in a row. 2 weeks ago, Sacred Heart fell at Cornell by double digits. Last week, they stormed back to take a 27-24 lead, only to lose in the final 2 minutes of the game. Now this week, the Pioneers have to face 4-0 Dartmouth. Dartmouth has scored no fewer than 34 points in any of its first 4 games, nor has it allowed the opposition to score more than 18 points in any of the first 4 games. The Big Green feature a productive rushing offense, putting up more than 250 yards per game, despite stumbling a bit in their recent performances against Penn and Cornell. Overall, Sacred Heart has the 2nd-ranked defense in the Northeast Conference. But head coach Mark Nofri knows that they have to get back to being more like themselves.
I don't think the whole Cornell game or half the Penn game is who we are. Like the games that we played, if you go back and you look, Lafayette and Bucknell and Wagner in the second half of Penn, that's who we are. And if we can go up there and play the type of football that we're capable of playing, we'll have a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter. If we go up there and we don't execute, we don't communicate, we don't play with that edge, and we don't play at full speed, then, they're a good team. And if you want to be a good team or you want to be a great team, you got to beat a great team. And here's an opportunity to beat probably the best team in the Ivy League this year.
I'm taking a look at the NEC stock market. I'll tell you whose value is on the way up. Heading into this year's NEC opener, Robert Morris had not had a 100-yard single-game rusher since 2015. But rookie running back Elijah Jackson has changed that. Back-to-back weeks, Jackson has gone over the century mark. He has scored 2 touchdowns in each of the Colonials' 2 NEC contests. The redshirt freshman from New Jersey high school powerhouse Paramus Catholic has carried the ball 43 times against NEC opponents this season for 233 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's a 2-time NEC Rookie of the Week. He is Robert Morris running back Elijah Jackson, and his stock is on the way up. I'm taking my Twitter time out, and I'm giving you a tweet from Duquesne football. Give the Dukes a follow on Twitter, DUQFB. The account recently tweeted a shout out to tight end Stu Allen. As I mentioned on this week's Super 7 Countdown, his name is Stu Allen, and all he does is catch touchdowns. 2 TD receptions in last week's game against Bryant. He has a total of 4 catches this year, all of them for touchdowns. Last year, Allen had 2 catches on the season. Of course, one of them was a touchdown, a 17-yard score in a win over Wagner. And a quick, interesting note on Stu heading into this week's Steel City Showdown. It'll be the first time in his collegiate career that he'll line up against Robert Morris and not see his brother on the other side of the ball. Stu's brother Drew was a defensive back for the Colonials. He graduated last year. Stu still has some athletic eligibility, and he's putting that to work for the Dukes this year, spending a lot of that time in the end zone. Blue 42, Omaha, Omaha. It's time for the NEC Audible. Now, it's no secret that the season hasn't gone the way Wagner would have liked it to thus far. The Seahawks defense has been somewhat decimated by injuries. They lost 2 key starting linebackers to injury. They're 1-5, but only 0-1 in the conference. Plenty of opportunity lies ahead, and head coach Jason Hotaling likes the attitude he's seeing from his guys.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of positivity in that meeting room right now, and I just think, this past summer, a friend of mine, Ricky Ayers, should come in and talk to us, and one of the players said to me, talk about hope and hold on possibilities exist, and guys just keep grinding. You keep working, and I think that's a tight-knit group, and I'm excited to get to work this week with them. It's been tough the past 5 weeks, yeah, but if you focus on that, you can't go forward.
That's amazing, bro. What has me in a state of amazement this week? Well, it's the aforementioned Ryan Folsom. I told you in the opening drive that Wagner's tailback leads the FCS in rushing yardage. That alone is pretty amazing. Even more impressive, Folsom has over 2,200 yards in just 17 games wearing a Wagner uniform. He needed only 15 games and 1 quarter to reach the 2,000-yard mark. As for this season, 4 of the top 5 single-game rushing performances by NEC running backs, well, they belong to Ryan Foles. Over 900 yards rushing in 6 games this season, over 2,200 yards rushing in 17 career games. 4 of the top 5 NEC single-game performances this year. Ryan Foles, that's amazing. It's time for the Did You Know? Did you know the top 2 sacks leaders in Division I FCS are right here in the Northeast Conference? I mentioned that vaunted Bryant pass rush earlier in the show. Everyone knows about reigning Defensive Player of the Year Thomas Costigan. But how about Tomas Wright? The defensive end had 4.5 tackles for a loss in last week's win at Duquesne. On the season, 7.5 quarterback sacks. That's the most by any Division I FCS athlete this season. As for the occupant in the number 2 spot, that's Wagner linebacker Cameron Gill. Gill with 7 sacks to his credit this season. You'll see him in the first half of our NEC featured doubleheader on ESPN3. Remember, we have 3 league games this week, 2 on ESPN3, 1 on Front Row, and then Sacred Heart at Dartmouth in non-conference play. You can see that on ESPN+. That'll do it for the Week 7 edition of the Whole 9 Yards. I'm Ralph Ventre. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the games. I'll see you again next week.